Hi!
Good evening, everyone. My name is Corey. On behalf of Thailand Creative Design Center, I would like to welcome you all to Creative Network Sharing by Co-working Lisa. First of all, I would like to introduce you to Creative Network Sharing program by Co-working Lisa. As many of you know, that TCDC has been in transition from the Emporium to the new space Interrent Room. That was when the co-working visa concept started. It's a cooperation network between TCDC and 30 creative co-working spaces in Bangkok to co-create interesting workshops and talks in related fields to our members. Second, we would like to announce that TCDC Bangkok Interrent Room will open early May, and we still hope to maintain this co-working visa network and come up with many more interesting activities for you all. You can follow us at tcdc.or.th or coworkingvisa.tcdc.or.th. Okay, today we are here. We have the honor of welcoming a special guest who has over 30 years experience in video production, including HD, 3D, 4K Ultra HD, and now 360 VR. He also created and taught Asia's first 3D production class at Mahidol University. He has been a guest speaker at conferences and seminars worldwide, including China, Singapore, and Hollywood. Today, partnered with Launchpad, we present you the technical building block of VR. At the end of the session, we'll welcome any questions you may have. And now please give a warm welcome to our Caudullo.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. I always have a lot of fun doing these things, so I'm always willing to do it. I'm a big mouth. I talk a lot anyway. Basically, I'm a storyteller. And I think the reality is that we all are. Going back as far as the caveman, etching his etchings on the cave wall, he was trying to tell a story. And all throughout history, we have evidence of man always trying to tell stories and trying to find better ways to tell stories. First, they sat around the campfire, or actually the fire, not even a camp, it was just the fire to cook everything and stay warm, and they would tell stories about what happened during their day. Then they progressed to books, and then finally we progressed to movies. And then from there, 3D to try and make things. It's always searching for a better way to tell the story, to make people more involved, to make them immersed part of the story. And really, 360, there's going to be more things coming, but every time you get a new technology, everybody says this. 360 is the most advanced way to get you immersed into the storytelling event. In another year or two, they'll come out with something else. But there's no doubt that 360 has been helped quite a bit along the way with people like Facebook jumping on board, YouTube jumping on board. As we were just talking now, Vimeo has just gotten on board with offering a platform for 360. There's a lot of conversation as well about, is 360 video VR? Is it virtual reality? And I say yes and no. And the purists say, no, it's not. But they're the ones who believe that unless it's 3D and it's graphics and you're in a headset, it's not virtual reality. Virtual reality is anything virtual reality in some ways is going to the movies. If you get involved in the motion picture, then you're in a new reality. You've accepted that reality. When we watch Star Wars or Avatar, we get involved in the picture. And later on, we talk about it like it's real. 360 video, if you're looking at it on Facebook or YouTube, probably not really virtual reality. But the minute you take it from Facebook and pop it into a headset, well, guess what? Now you're fully immersed. I see people, I put this headset on and I've got this great video I can show you guys, because there's not a lot of us, so it actually makes it easy. There's this great video I did with my wife's aunt. She grows silkworms. And so I took the little Samsung gear And I sat it in the middle of the basket with all the baby silkworms moving around on it, and I shot it. And then she leaned in, and I didn't mean I asked her to do it, but she leaned in and started looking down at the silkworms. And when you look at that in this, don't tell me you won't jump, because it's a surprise. You're not expecting it. And so it's something that immerses you. If that's the kind of reaction you get, you're in virtual reality. So we're going to talk about the tools, the building blocks. So the first and foremost, the biggest building block is actually telling a story. Now there's a lot of direction that things are going in right now, because everybody's trying to figure out, how do we use this? How do we tell a story with 360? How do we get people involved? How do we reach them? Corporate and advertising, they were some of the first ones to jump on board. Right closely behind that has been documentaries and philanthropic organizations trying to expose something that's going on in the world, trying to make people feel, and therefore that's where they coined the term empathy machine. Because what they want to do is they want to make you feel like you're with this poor person in war-torn Somalia, and you're right there and you see what's going on. Or you're in an old school in Chernobyl that has just been decimated, and you're looking all around and you feel it, it's right there. So those are the elements right now that we're working with. Narrative is starting slowly, because since you've got the whole room to fill, how do you tell a story? The truth is, I've got this whole room. You don't see me looking back here, but I know it's back here. Basically, I'm looking at all of you. So more times than not, the story is told in 180 degrees or less. Yes, you get to see everything else, and maybe you can throw in some other elements behind that make it interesting. Okay, so maybe there's a, for instance, if we had the projector on and we were projecting something up there and I was talking about it and I turned and pointed at it, that's a very excellent way to illustrate how you would use 360 to tell a story. You don't want to use it gratuitously, but at the same time, you do want to try and incorporate it because it is part of the whole experience. But 90% of what you're doing is going to be right in front of you. Okay? Now, what you're seeing here is a very interesting cross-section. As far as the next tool, of course, you got to have a camera. And cameras come basically in all shapes and sizes, as you can see from the Ricoh Theta to the Samsung Gear to the GoPro Omni, all right, and more. I don't have all of them. There's a new one that just came out that's starting at $95,000. I don't think I'll be getting that one. But the market is just opening. Everybody is getting on board. Everybody is trying to come out with a new one. And I gotta say that overall, I think that China is really driving the market more than any place else. Most of the technology that you're seeing is either coming from China or being reproduced in China. Okay? There's a lot of startups that are coming out of there, and they're making some very good equipment. So that's the next thing. What kind of camera do you need? You can start with the Ricoh. The Ricoh is probably one of the cheapest ones. This one goes for about 15,000 baht here in Thailand. And I've got it set up right now with a 3D printed base so that I can go ahead and plug in and still have it sitting on a platform. I don't think they really gave it a lot of thought when they made this unit, but all of a sudden, the Theta has become a big deal with live streaming, that's another whole subsection of the market right now. Everybody's coming out with live streaming cameras. I don't see that many things. I can see it for advertising. If you are opening a new store or a new brand, doing a live stream and getting it promoted out there is going to make a big difference in getting viewers and getting people and getting the brand recognition. The Ricoh is probably the cheapest thing that you can possibly use. Right now, you only can use it in limited areas. Periscope is supporting it, but it's still in beta, and they only gave invitations to a certain amount of people. Facebook is going to be going with 360 Live soon, but it's not quite there yet either. So right now, the most practical way to go with this is to broadcast on YouTube. And I do see that as being a little bit of a problem because, to be quite honest, YouTube is like the giant black hole. There are so many videos, there are so many things there that when you go to look for something, if you don't have it well promoted, nobody's going to find it. So yes, it's a great little device, but I will tell you that I've experimented with it and it's not quite there yet, which is why Rico is coming out with a new one that is designed for 360 streaming. And in fact, what it's doing is it's kept the same basic shape, made a little bit bigger. It's put some heat sinks actually into the body, and then it's put all the plugs smartly on the side. And it also gave a separate power connection so that it's designed that you can do streaming with it for up to 24 hours straight. This one, after about 20 minutes, it'll probably drop out. So it's good for if you're doing a small broadcast and you want to get it out to people, that's a good way to go. The Samsung Gear, and there's a reason why I have each one of these. Samsung, yes?
Why is that? Is that because of the memory or?
Since it's streaming, it's not even recording to the device. It's just sending the information out. It's going into, plus it's a little bit cumbersome. I'll show you how it works here. So you press and hold two buttons, and then it comes on, it flashes a little live thing, and then you plug it into your computer, and you have to have this program running.
So it's just the capacity, or is it the battery? Why do you say
it's
that?
the design.
Okay.
It's really the design. The engineers, when they built this, let's see, there. Okay, now you can see we're set up, this is kind of the intermediate program. From here, I then would connect to YouTube, have to set up on YouTube, then I would go back to this program and hit start streaming, and then all of a sudden it would get to YouTube, and there's a pretty generous delay by the time it gets up there, okay? Up to like, depending upon what your internet speed is, it can be almost a minute of a delay, okay? So that's why I say it's not the most ideal. It's something that they kind of shoehorned in after because they really didn't have enough forethought. Just like putting the USB and the HDMI connections, and then putting also the tripod screw all in next to each other. It's impossible. So that's why I designed and 3D printed this so that I could go ahead and plug it in and have it work. But like I said, with experimenting, what I'm seeing is that it's not really robust enough. The new one that's coming out, which is going to up the price a little bit, it's going to go up to probably about 20,000 baht. And I'm not sure if it's going to be available in Thailand or not. The Samsung Gear, interesting story behind this one. The Samsung Gear, Samsung came out with a line of cameras, the NX camera line. And they came out with them in 2015. And the NX1 was hailed as being one of the best cameras of the year. Another camera that was in the line that was just a slightly dumbed down version of the NX1 was the NX500. Well, at the end of 2015, Samsung decided there wasn't a big enough market share and they completely closed down their entire camera line. Didn't matter that this camera had received these kudos from everyone in the industry and had been rated as one of the top 10 cameras that came out. They shut everything down. But what they did do is, of course, they still own the technology. So this camera has actually got the same engine, a little bit modified, as the NX500. So you've got a beautiful image. It's a beautiful image all overall, and it does an excellent job and runs very, very nice. I think it's one of the best deals on the market. It's got beautiful color thanks to the NX500, and it does a great job. Another one is the Kodak. Now what you're seeing here is a bit of a modified version of it. This is the Kodak SP360, and normally each camera is separate. And if you want to do 360, you buy a pack of two. But you could use this alone, and this will do 235 degrees of video. So if you sat it on the table and you were doing a conference and you wanted to record the conference, it would get everything for most of the area. It just wouldn't get the floor all the way. But if you put two of these together, then you could have 360 very easily and have a nice overlap. Well, what I found is that it's a great little camera, but even with only two, there's not quite enough of an overlap for a lot of situations. So I basically came up with a design and worked with a Chinese company, and basically came up with this can be used as either 3 cameras or 4 cameras. So this one doesn't have to be used, but it does make for a nice seamless ceiling area, top area. So this is another one that's out on the market. These go for a pair, they go for slightly under, like about 28,000 baht, but they're not available in Thailand, unfortunately. You have to import them in.
So when you look at it, you actually have a program that's blending everything together.
What it's called is a stitching program, much like sewing. You're stitching everything together. And that's another thing, that's a part of the building blocks. And I'll get a little bit more into that. But let me spend just a minute going to kind of this is kind of the breakthrough camera. This is the GoPro Omni. And this was the first real professional 360 camera. And the reason why I say professional is that with this camera, you have an external power source, so you don't have any batteries inside the cameras. You have a master camera, which is all the other 5 are slaved to it, so that when you turn it on, it recognizes and does a handshake back and forth with the rest of the cameras, and then you press one button or you use the remote, and your remote only has to go to one camera instead of all 6, and you've got a recording going. It's fail-safe, it's foolproof. Not only that, but as you move from one side to the other, the cameras, you're not going to have a hiccup with motion. Whereas when you see before, we had a lot of these where they used basically the GoPro cameras and they put them into a 3D printed cube and use those. But then what you had to do, I like to jokingly refer to it as clap sync, because every time you started it, you prayed that all 6 of them were going to fire, because you basically just did a Wi-Fi connection to 6 different cameras using one remote and pressed the button and pray that it's going to actually work. And then you sat there and did this. And then you twisted the camera back and forth. And then in the stitching program, you had to make sure they all lined up, and not all 6 of the cameras start at the same time. With this, it's not an issue. They all start precisely at the same time, okay? When you get into technical terms, you have scan lines on your TVs that go back and forth, okay? Imagine you have 6 cameras. You have to make sure that to have it really in sync, all 6 of those cameras, the scan lines are doing this at the same time. This camera does that, whereas the rest of them did not. You did have things before this. The Jaunt, the Google Jump was actually the basis for setting up this camera, but that Google Jump is 16 cameras, and the cost at the time when it came out was around $15,000 US. The Jaunt, I think, is going for $45,000 US. This came out at $5,000. So relatively speaking, when you talk about some of the DSLRs that are out on the market, that's an affordable price for a lot of people. The problem is everybody got into the idea that they could just sit it down and start it and just shoot. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. With this, you have a lot more flexibility. But if you turn it the wrong way, you still have seams. So you notice I've got one lens facing you guys and one lens facing me. If I turn around and I walk too fast over and too close to it, you wind up with a problem where you get people cutting off. And this is where it's both a plus and a minus. There's a term in video called parallax. Parallax is when you have 2 cameras shooting the same object, but they're not in the same physical space. And so what you have is the difference in the lenses creates a different size of the image. So in other words, with this camera, if I had it sitting like this, I would get you guys with both this camera and with this camera. But the problem is this camera's closer. This camera's a little further away, and that makes a difference, okay? So the biggest problem that ran into is that people thought they could just go ahead and do this, and when it didn't work, they went into shock. Okay, so you have a lot of amateurs out there that have gone out and gotten these. Freedom 360 was a big name in it for a while with the 3D printed rigs, and they're good for amateurs, but they're not a professional piece of equipment. And just like if you turned around and handed a 5-year-old a Canon, they could probably shoot something, but they certainly wouldn't get a professional product out of it. And that's the kind of the thing that we ran into a lot with the Omni at this point. And it's also, besides being about the shooting, now let's get into the next building block. You've got a whole nother process when you're putting these things together. I have to take all 6 micro SD cards out of this, put it into a USB hub with 6 readers, plug it into the computer, and it's got to be a powered one because otherwise you're not going to be, your computer can't handle 6 inputs, and you're shooting, with these cameras, with 360, you've gone back to basically to 4:3 ratio, the old SD version, where you basically, like the old TV sets, where it's 4 inches wide to every 3 inches tall. Now we all have what we call 16:9, where it's 16 inches wide for every 9 inches tall. Well, these are square, basically, and you're shooting 2.7K for each camera. So now you've got all of this bandwidth that you got to try and put into your laptop or into your PC. Then you've got to stitch them together. And there's a French program, but actually both of the programs that initially were out there, Video Stitch and AutoPano, were both French companies and both French programs. And I train with the French in 3D, and they're wonderful, but they are terrible at writing any kind of manuals or doing videos. And their programs are not intuitive. You have to really know what you're doing. And so that's the next building block, is putting it all together. And that takes a level of competency. Otherwise, you can shoot the best 360 ever with this camera, but when you go to put it together, it all falls apart. Then once you get them all stitched and bring them in, I should back up 1 second. One thing that Color and Omni, actually, Color is the name of the company that did AutoPano, and they were bought by GoPro, and so they created an integration. So they created a separate program called the Omni Importer. So that way, it would automatically do a quick stitch on each one of it would recognize them, put them into individual folders, because if you had to do it manually, imagine you have 6 folders worth of video, and you have to line up each shot, 6 of them, and put them into another folder. Well, this program does it automatically. So they've streamlined this, and I started working with, I was very fortunate. This is prototype number 87. This was given to me by GoPro because they asked me to come on board and help them set up the beta program. So I actually started the beta program a month before the beta program actually started, so that I could show them what they didn't have quite right and try and streamline the whole process. So I've been working with their programs for this since the alpha stage. And if any of you are familiar with how programs evolve, the alpha is the roughest stage. It's like barely out of code, and it's the first ones, and there's always lots of problems with it. So I progressed from alpha all the way through the beta stages to the release. And it was a lot of fun to be involved with, but it was also trying at times. But one of the cool things about it is that you get to be the first one, and you're kind of like paving the way for other people to do. So now we get to the point where we've got it, we bring it in, we stitch it all together, we now output it as a single video, which kind of looks like this. Then you have to bring it into something like Premiere, and actually right now Premiere is one of the only NLE softwares out there that offers 360 support. So then you bring it into there, and that's when the fun begins, because then you can start doing your edit. How do you edit 360? Well, you need to be able to change, like for instance, I'm sitting over here, but when you come up in a headset, this is the area that you would normally see. It's about that much. So they had to come up with plugins, and a company called Mettle came up with a group of plugins called the Skybox, and those basically have a plugin that allows you to rotate the sphere around so that you can move it into the area that you need to. How do you do titles? Well, if you put titles on them, normal, regular titles, by the way, this comes out to 3840 by 1920. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio, okay? So now you throw a title on there and it's spherical. So you're wrapping it around a globe, basically. You know, we don't think about that when we look doing it, but that's what it comes down to. So when you put a title in there that's done as a normal title, it's gonna warp in strange ways. It's gonna be thin in the middle and it's gonna come out on the sides. So they came up with another plugin that solves that problem, and it resizes it and warps it so that it matches the 360. Then they came out with transitions and all sorts of effects, and so the whole infrastructure has been growing and growing and growing. I just had another company called Canvas 360, which just got a hold of me and asked me to get involved in their beta program on their set of plugins. And this is the ongoing process right now. So these are all the building blocks, but you also always have to remember, you got to go back to that first block. Storytelling. No matter what you're doing, whether it's a corporate video or whether it's a documentary or whatever it is, an advertisement, there's still a story, because that's what's going to keep people keeping the headset on or looking at it on Facebook. Funny little story. I sent a video, an early video that I did to a friend because I wanted to get some feedback, and I sent it to them for their phone. I said, take a look at this and see what you think. And they sent me back a really strange response. I said, look at it on Facebook. It's you can watch it on there, no problem. They said, yeah, it's great, but why did you only shoot people's feet? They had taken their phone and they did this, and Facebook automatically knows. And nobody on Facebook explained what that little round button is. In fact, a lot of people still don't know that if you tap that little round button on the display, it'll bring it back to center for you, even if you have it laying down like this. Education. Education is key. That's kind of when I realized doing nice little get-togethers like this with people and talking about the process and what we have to do and making them understand really how difficult it is. It's not easy. That's key to seeing the whole genre of 360 move forward. Because if people don't understand it, if potential clients don't understand it, then they don't know how to use it. And that gets them in trouble because they'll wind up with a bad product. So I like to be kind of interactive with everybody. I'd like to go around the room at this point. I'd like to get some input from you guys about why did you come tonight? What's your interest in 360? What do you want to do with 360? Or did you just lose a bet and you had to come? Start over here.
Okay, my name is Tobias. I haven't actually studied anything in filmmaking, but I'm very interested. And I've come to these events with the same question all over. How does it apply to narrative storytelling? So you just gave a little bit of a hint, how do you do editing? So if you have like a movie and you have different locations and you cut from one location to the other, I'm not sure how it can, at the moment I have no imagination how it can be done. That's why I'm here.
I'll give you a little bit more insight in that.
I'm Jimmy. I'm trying to think similarly about how to use this technology to tell stories, particularly making web stories or things that happen in real space around fashion or design brands.
Okay, back there.
Oh boy, I work for corporate. I am not a programmer anymore, no longer working in IT. I know a little bit about technology. I do a lot of like study about what's technology out there and what can be applied to my companies. My corporate is like heavy manufacturing. It's gonna be a little far for us, but might be interesting.
What kind of manufacturing?
food industry.
Actually, VR is fantastic for that.
Yep.
It really is. Okay.
My name is Kishaya. Okay. Actually, I am a graphic designer, and my company used to do some VR object for photo. Do you know that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And some panorama.
Okay.
Okay. And I see the VR is a new technique. VR, the video is
Right.
a new technique.
Right.
I want to learn about it, the new technique. And actually, I am a lecturer in the faculty of digital media.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
At where?
Seatum University.
Oh, very good.
Yes,
Very
I
good.
want to bring new knowledge to my students.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, right here in front.
Okay, I'm a TCDC staff.
Okay. You lost the bet. I know. You lost the bet, so you had to be here. I understand.
Every day I share my story and my work with my friends in a blog, but in VR technology can be a better way for share my story.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I come here and
Cool.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Okay.
So I'm back. I'm from TCDC staff,
Okay.
and so we work with an innovative department.
Very good. Very good. Yes.
I'm Jane. Yeah, I'm also TCDC.
Okay.
The thing is, like, VR is very new, and
Yes.
we like to bring back a lot of updates from
Cool.
this field to our team to see like what's going on in this VR.
VR as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm more, and I don't know about the VR much more, so because why I'm here.
Good. Okay. Well, I'll try. What I like to do that
I
because
can share a little bit.
Go ahead, please.
First, I didn't understand so much about it, like, what does it do? But listening to you made me think of the first VR I actually saw, the 360.
Right.
It was the Google Street View.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
And
You know what? I go around with this all over Thailand, and people automatically Google or GoPro.
and I actually saw one of the first Google models camera,
Right.
the way, the funny thing, and
Right.
seeing it today.
So
it's
streamlined
right,
compared to what that
right,
looks
right.
like.
And when you talk about storytelling, I remembered that VR, like around last November, if you remember, Fantastic Beast.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the first movie content that they do 360
Mhm.
kind of, and I realized that it is so cool, but yet not a lot of producers or
No.
not a lot of people do that. So there are not a lot of resources out there for people to actually view the capacity of the VR. And when you mention about storytelling, I get myself really related to this subject. There was I used to see this similar to Broadway show in New York called Sleep No More.
Uh-huh.
It's about Macbeth, and it's in a hotel
Right.
when you have to kind of follow through all the actor and actresses. But everything happened in the same time because everything happened in the hotel.
Right.
And it reminds me of this when you said, who are you gonna follow? It's for me at that time, I thought like, who am I gonna follow? Am I gonna follow Macbeth or am I gonna follow somebody
Yes.
else? And
It's very
that's what
true.
I think about like 360. It's your choice to
Yes.
kind of and your peripheral can
Mhm.
only see probably 200 degrees or what. So you can only choose what you want
Right.
to, right?
Right.
So it's amazing.
You know, first of all, let me point out that a lot of Hollywood movies have tried to imitate 360 for years. How many times have you seen the quick pan shots where it spins around and it's done from the point of view of the central character? Then there's a cut back and you see that the character is standing there looking confused because he's confused, everything is spinning around him. Okay? It's a 360 technique. I mean, it's made for 360. The other side of the coin is understand something about Hollywood. They are not mavericks. They are the most conservative group of people. I should turn off the camera when I'm saying this. They are the most conservative group of people. They would rather rehash the same story with some slight twist than come up with something really new and innovative. Because you know why? Those are the guys that keep working because they make money, okay? It's not so much, that's why you have this whole genre of people called independent filmmakers. The reason they're independent filmmakers is because they don't fit that mold. I've been very lucky in my career. I've jumped back and forth where I've worked on movies. One of the most recent ones I just did was Kickbox, the redo of Kickboxer that was shot here in Thailand. And even on that, I was a bit of the maverick because I was the behind the scenes videographer. So I got to make my own movie within making a movie, which was kind of cool. But mostly the things that I've done have been my own projects. All of the 3D stories that I did about 24 half-hour TV shows, and at one time, they were showing in 65 countries around the world. So I've been very, very lucky. I know how to do both sides of it. I shot a 4K 1-hour documentary about Angkor that was sold to Discovery Channel. So, and that was commissioned by myself. They didn't commission me to do it. I did it and then I sold it after the fact. So I kind of jumped back and forth between two worlds. And I'm always excited by new technology. And I always like to be on, I'd rather be the first guy doing it rather than the guy who says, hey, that kind of seems like everybody's doing it. I should do this too. You know, I don't like being that. I'm going to turn this one off, right?
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
So when you think about Hollywood, there's such a massive structure with the theater distribution model, which you have to fight against. So you're either getting like a headset into a theater, which seems like too much friction, as opposed to just like household or anywhere use, which seems more likely for Hulu or Netflix or a company like that. Are there natural
avenues?
Yeah, avenues and connections between this innovative distribution model and new distributors of content and then the type of content that can be created here?
You know, when 360 got started, basically everybody was, and still pretty much, everybody is trying to figure out how to make it work. Theaters have been in such doldrums because there are just so damn many of them. They're constantly fighting for audience. And so actually right now, there are a good number, and I say a good number, it's probably less than 100 theaters that are starting to integrate, including IMAX, which are starting to integrate headsets with high-end displays. Now, one of the most interesting things that I heard, and I had heard about this before, and because I'm also a technical journalist. I write for Student Filmmakers Magazine, HD Pro Guide Magazine, Digital Cinema Reports, HD Guru, and about 3 or 4 others. And so I get to find out about a lot of things that are going on. Samsung just leaked that they're coming out with a new headset. And you're not going to need to put your phone in it. And this is what I've been seeing. I thought it would come faster, to be quite honest. It has a built-in, basically, take the phone out of an Android and put it in. Okay, so you've got a screen and you've got all the rest of it that makes up an Android phone, except you don't make phone calls with it. Okay? And here's the deal. What makes the experience good, you put it on, and if you ever saw the first one, the white ones, they were kind of like, you felt like you were standing outside a screen door. In fact, that's what they called it, was a screen door effect. Because you were looking at this, you're putting your phone 3 inches away from your face, and it didn't look good. It was soft, it was mushy, it was like lines you could see. This one does 4K, okay? This one does 8K. Now you might think, why do you need 8K? You don't even have an 8K TV out on the market yet, right? There's a reason. That's because when you talk about 4K, now 4K is the big one, so let's start there. Take 4K. We've got an overall 4K image that's wrapped around 360 degrees. This headset shows you, the new one, shows you 101 degrees field of view, FOV. So if you figure the math on that you're stretching 4K around, that means in your FOV, you're only seeing about 1.2K, which means that you're getting less than HD resolution. So now let's step back over to this one. with only HD resolution, and you're still stretching it around 360 degrees. You do the math on that and you got less than SD quality. So when you look at this, it looks soft. This one doesn't look too bad, but it still looks a little soft. Now you got this baby coming in at 8K. That's why. Eventually, they need to get it to the point, and they're playing around with some different ideas. There are already a few applications on the Samsung that use this. And we're all kind of getting familiar with the idea of adaptive streaming. So with YouTube, the better your internet connection, the higher the quality of the video that you're seeing. If the internet connection is too slow, it reduces the resolution so that you can still see it playing at a normal rate. Well, they're targeting what they're trying to do now is they're talking about adaptive focus, adaptive bit rate. So if your eye, because it has eye tracking, if your eye is looking in one area, it's going to give more resolution to that area, and then when you move, it's going to change. The early ones that they're working with, it's a little slow on the move. When you move over, it looks a little fuzzy, and then all of a sudden it snaps into focus more. But that's why. And another, we were talking about, what people are using this for. I'll give you an idea. I did a corporate project for a company called Celestica. Celestica is one of these companies that you may have heard of this name, but you don't have a clue about what they do. The last quarter of last year, their net sales were $1.55 billion. They build everything. The newest Facebook servers that they'll be delivering soon were made by Celestica. The entertainment systems that are on most airplanes are made by Celestica. Circuit boards for the Hercules fighter were made by Celestica. Solar panels were made by Celestica. So this is a multinational corporation. We basically went to 3 countries, 4 different locations over an 8-day period and shot 8K 360 video. Now, how are they going to use this? Well, what they decided to do, because they can, they are building, it's just about finished now. They're building a showcase center in San Jose, California, right in Silicon Valley, okay? And what they've done is, as you walk in, we shot a bunch of 4K video at the same time, and you see that up on the screens. Then you'll go into this room, and the room is, 3/4 of the room is curved glass, and it's 10 feet tall. And you'll walk in, and on cue, they'll press a button, and the glass will darken because it's smart glass, and they're projecting 8K 360 video all around the room surrounding you. So there's where thinking outside the box, come up with a way to wow your customers or potential customers. That's something outside the box. They're not worried about putting it in a headset. Maybe they will down the line, but they got something better than a headset. They're going to put you right in the rooms with everybody. So this is some of the things that you can do with 360. And these are all part of the building blocks. Because let's face it, people see one thing that's being done, it gives them an idea to do something else. It gives them an idea to do something different. So with narrative, you might have somebody walk in, you might have your character seated right center, but you have a character walking in from over here, and they start talking to this character. What are you going to do? Your head's going to turn. Now you've used sound cues to go ahead and direct the action. Now, you don't want to start having a ping pong match, so you don't want to have him staying over there and her sitting right there, and you're going like this trying to listen to the two of them. You're going to get that neck strain. Nobody's going to enjoy something like that. So what you want to try and do is you may start out doing that, but in a narrative story, what you do is people don't yell at each other. They might yell at each other across the room, husband and wife, but they don't normally stay that far apart. Most times people get close to go ahead and talk. You know, there are always the exceptions to the rule, and that's what storytelling is about, is doing something different. But there's just one instance of how you can utilize 360 to create good narrative. You know, a fashion show. Imagine a fashion show where instead of having a runway going straight down, you have 3 runways or 4. North, south, east, west. And everybody comes to the center. And in the center, you have a circle. So now what happens is one comes down the runway, they come around the circle, and they continue out. And in the center of that circle is a 360 camera. So now you've created a dynamic that the people in the audience aren't getting as good a view as the people who are going to have the 360 headset. But that's what you want. You want those people in the audience as well to turn around and say, oh, I got to see this. I've got to see this in the headset and see what this looks like. Again, we're always trying to tell the better story. We're trying to make that better etching on the wall in the cave. So that's what it's all about. Any other questions? Nothing?
I have another
Jimmy?
question.
Sure.
I also lecture about marketing and media here and back in New York. And I often bring up Marshall McLuhan, hot and cool media.
Mm-hmm.
If the definition of hot media is something that is kind of happening to you and you're not as responsive, and cool is something that requires you to move in towards it and partake. Television, according to McLuhan, was cool, but many people then kind of thought it was more of a hot medium where you sit back and just let television happen to you.
Right.
This is clearly more interactive.
Oh, definitely.
And more engaging. So,
but it doesn't have to be at the same time. I think just like television, I think it can, depending upon how you want to set up the story, it can be a dead cold medium.
Right.
It's up to the storyteller to figure out which direction they want to take it in. But this has the potential to be a hotter media in that sense than any other media before it.
You could be completely directing people nonstop.
Yes.
Where they're not really making decisions, but cues,
Right.
visual cues, audio. So, from your experience, is there like a sweet spot right now where you can avoid that ping pong and avoid the kind of nausea of just being so engaged and pushed around?
Yeah. The thing is that and again, as a storyteller, I went through this in 3D. 3D was a totally different way to present something. And one of the most sold pieces that I had, there were 2 clips that people just went nuts for, okay? One of them was an elephant reaching out with his trunk, and we had somebody standing next to the camera with bananas. And so this elephant can you imagine it? They're just reaching it. So we'd be in a room, and there'd be all these executives in suits with 3D glasses on, and every one of them would turn into 3-year-old children because they'd start reaching for the elephant's trunk because it felt like it was coming off the screen. That is the wow factor. That works initially, but down the line, you have to replace the wow with substance. And so what you want to do initially right now is very much, again, like 3D, you want to leave your scenes up there a little bit longer because people are going to look around. That's the wow factor in 360, is the fact that they can look around. So if you put them into a different environment, they're going to want to see what that, like, for instance, I'm doing a series of walking tours. And so can you imagine you're on the corner at Democracy Monument and the traffic is just going all around and it's you're going to want to look around. If you leave that scene up for 3 seconds like you might normally do in video, your audience is just going to get a headache because it's too fast. Instead, you need to go with like almost 15 to 30 seconds to let it sit and linger a little bit. Okay? So you want to kind of like ease. What we do right now in the next 6 months is going to be very different than what's done a year from now. Because the longer this medium is out there, the more people get used to it, and then you can start experimenting. You can be a little bit bolder. But right now, you kind of have to stay kind of conservative. I mean, look at how long it took before somebody came up with a Blair Witch Project. Okay? If they had come up, 5 years earlier, if somebody tried to put that into a theater, they tell them they were crazy and get that piece of junk out of here. But yet, look what happened. You had a phenomena because it was outside the realm of everything else that people have been doing. And so, 360 will reach that point where you have to do something really different. Okay? Another thing is with the tools that we have right now, you can force the view. You can slowly make it turn. The problem is people can still turn the opposite direction. So you might wind up with somebody getting sick because the camera's moving this way. You're forcing it to go this way because you want them to see something, but they turn their head this way. Boy, that's that crossover, it just speeds everything up. It's not very pretty, okay? So there's different ways to work with the medium and make it work for you. But it just depends on what the story is that you want to tell. And, just like everything else, you have to do storyboards, you have to do shot blocking to make sure you're utilizing the cameras the right way. Anything else? Yes.
My question is, what's next? Will the 360 camera be cheaper? Will the viewer, the Oculus, or some other brands be cheaper so it gets to more audience?
Undoubtedly, yes. Again, I'll draw back on 3D because I see a lot of relevance in the similarities. When 3D TVs came out, when plasma TVs came out, the first plasma TVs that came out were $10,000 US. Okay, now you can get one for 15,000 baht. It's like crazy. The same thing has already started happening. Oculus dropped their price already because they realized they weren't getting the sales that they thought. Samsung, on the other hand, at $99 or 3,000 baht, they have the right price point and it becomes a bonus.
Yeah.
And they're already talking about the S8 as being that 360 is one of the biggest bonuses to the S8, even though the screen is still going to be the same pixels per inch. So yes, everything always gets cheaper. We're already seeing the race for cameras with dropping prices. But then on the other side of the coin, like I said, here's a camera that just debuted at $95,000 for a pre-order, which makes it seem like after the pre-order area is done, the price maybe is going to go higher. But then again, it could drop down because maybe nobody's going to buy it.
Right.
Okay, so there's a lot of ways that it's going to go. It's going to go in both directions. The answer is basically yes and no. It's kind of like they went this way because that's what's happening. Everybody's going in different directions. Everybody thinks that they've got the ideal market plan. Okay, and time tells, and everybody else shakes out along the way. There's already been a bunch of VR 360 sites that have started closing down. Even GoPro closed their VR. Okay, another one called Hug VR just closed. There was another one that just before that, I can't remember the name of it. That's how memorable it was.
So the
Yes.
industry density is not because it's not enough producer, but that's not enough consumer. That's what you're saying.
Right now, yeah. I mean, the media loves to turn around and throw this thing out and say, oh, there's not enough content. On my blog, I put up a feature column called Your Daily VR Fix. And what I set out to do was to just kind of abolish this whole idea that there's not enough content. There's reams of content. It's not all good, but there is plenty of content out there. Okay? So, the media just likes to hang on that for some reason. They did it with 3D the same way. But, it's developing and it is coming out. It's getting more and more. But again, along that line is, yes, there are a lot of these headsets out there, but a lot of the headsets that went out, Samsung says there were 5 million headsets sold. That may not be completely accurate because a whole lot of those headsets were giveaways that if you bought the phone, you got the headset. How many people have that headset still in the box? It never came out and it's sitting on the shelf somewhere. Probably a lot.
Can I ask a stupid question?
There are no stupid questions.
Well,
Okay, that's a stupid question. No, I'm
basic
sorry.
question.
Yes.
Okay. Are there headsets without the phone attachment, or all of these headsets coming as like a phone plug into it?
Right now, there's a ton of them that came out with the phone because that's the best way to watch it.
It's the most cost effective and it's easy to design into because it's an existing product.
Exactly. And the best thing about it, and this is why I keep coming back to Samsung, because these guys have really got it together, I gotta say. If you go to Facebook and if you put up something, you click, because Facebook and Oculus and Samsung, this was made by Oculus, this was designed by Oculus. You basically, if you click in one corner, it'll say, do you want to watch it in your Oculus headset? So in other words, they've taken it to where you can look at it on your phone and you can turn around, or you can use your finger and spin it around, or you can take the phone and pop it into the headset. They've created a path to get you into this headset because the headset's the most immersive. But most people right now are still watching it just on their phone.
Right.
I didn't even know that you can buy a goggle and put it on.
Yeah, well, that's like, so do you think the future is with phone integration because it just gets you to that path, or is the future like
I think it's going to be.
synced, like I've got this other thing, let me put it on?
I think it's going to be a mix because there are some people that don't like when I have this on. I can either choose or not choose to have my app notices come up. Like if I don't want to be disturbed,
Yeah.
you know, or what happens when the phone rings. All right, now one of the new things that they just introduced was voice search. So now I can pop this in and I can say,
I heard you were doing that.
I was doing it before, open gallery, and it opened the gallery for me, which is kind of cool. Everybody loves, you know, voice applications, so that's kind of a big thing. So is it going to be one or the other? No, it's going to be a mix. And that's why I think that 360 has such a good chance to really take hold, because you go from having it in an app or on Facebook or a standalone app to going into a headset, to going into a more integrated headset that's a standalone, to going into something like the Oculus or the HTC Vive. Where I do see things going down the line is that you're going to have an integrated mix, and that's where the term mixed reality comes in, where you have both AR and VR joining together. A good example of this right now, Samsung again is already there. Do you know that when you put this on and you put your phone in, there's a mode that you can go to that turns on the camera. So now you have this on, but you hit that mode by tapping on the little thing, and you can see what's going on in the room because it'll just access the camera. It's meant for AR, for God's sakes. So now what happens, now imagine this. You're visiting a new town, you're a tourist, and you've gone someplace, and you don't know where to go. You know, nobody uses maps anymore. You know, everybody tries to use Google. Well, what if you just pick up your phone or put it into a headset and you point the phone around, and on the app it says, point it at this sign when you see this sign. And all of a sudden you point to that sign and it recognizes the shape of the sign. And then all of a sudden starts playing a video. There's a perfect example of MR, mixed reality, okay? So there are lots of ways for this to happen. Imagine a kid in school. You give them a headset. They put it on. They're still seeing the rest of the classroom. But then there's a globe sitting there. And the teacher instructs the kid to go over to the globe and spin it and look at a country on that globe. And they've got the headset on, and they spin it, and they look at that country, and all of a sudden it flashes and highlights, and all of a sudden they're transported to that country. And they're seeing information about that country. How much better way of learning is that? Mixed reality. These are the things that are going to drive everything forward. Apps. You know, much like Pano Tour, where you're doing it with still pictures right now, apps can also drive your audience to a narrative story.
Evaluate us outside. There is a QR code where you can screen with your line QR, and after you submit, there's just a little souvenir for you out there.
Thank you.
And thank you, and have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Have you mentioned your blog? Is it on your website?
Yes, 3dguy or altadulo.com. Okay.
So you actually based in Thailand or
Yes, I've been here for 17 years.
20 years?
They try to get rid of me, I keep coming back now.
So is this a company you own yourself or
Yes.
is this okay?
And there's a small break outside.